William Feather, prominent American author, once said, "Wealth flows from energy and ideas." Our group analyzed the correlation between GDP per capita electricity consumption per person in various nations. The electricity used per person in kilowatts defined by Gapminder is the production of both power and heat plants that is consumed by the country. Whereas the GDP per capita is defined as gross domestic product per person added for differences in purchasing power based on the 2011 fixed price and PPP based ICP. Right away, one can see that positive correlations between time and energy consumption and time net income per capita. By looking at the graph, a few things become immediately obvious. The entirety of Africa is for the most part an outlier in GDP rankings. However, Libya is an outlier of Africa altogether. Throughout the years in the graph, Libya has made substantial steps backwards up until they started utilizing more energy. Once this happened, they slowly began to grow their GDP per capita once again. It is not a surprise that Africa was one of the last continents to incorporate energy into their everyday lives. But it is a surprise that along with Africa, China had a late start to energy consumption as well. Not only is energy the cause of low GDP per capita in Africa, but also corruption. The amount of corruption that comes out Africa is absurd. This summer, Ryan spent 4 weeks in the world's largest slum that happens to reside in Kenya, Kaiberia. He made friends from all ends of the wealth spectrum and discussed with them why they believe their country's state is as bad as it is and why the slums are the worst in the world. Their answer was the corruption in politics. You see, the same corrupt leaders that pocket aid, taxes, and other wealth are the same ones printing more money to use towards housing, and health services pad artificial stats to their resume. While in reality it just causes inflation, how is it related to energy? It demonstrates the type of extractive government Kenya and many other African countries utilize that limit the ability for entrepreneurs and investors to invest in things such as clean energy. North America as a whole contains the countries with the highest GDPs. However, the graph does point out one period where a recession occurs in 2008. It is a completely understandable considering this is when the American banking crisis occurred. Energy was not the cause of this depression, not only because of an understanding of common knowledge, but also because the trend did not decrease along the y-axis for the US. Also, if you notice, particular Middle Eastern countries are positive outliers, countries like Kuwait. These countries are oil rich, meaning that they sell most of the world's energy and inherit the returns. Now, these far-reaching outliers will show decreases in GDP per capita as the influence of more and more cleaner energies are introduced. In fact, the positive correlation between energy and GDP per capita will diminish in general as cleaner energies are introduced. GDP and energy have an obvious correlation. Without energy, the peak of GDP growth would be substantially lower. This is apparent considering how our world and economic system literally revolves around digital transactions today.